Hey YouTube, Raul here, coming at you with some content. Today actually I'm going to be reading a book, and that's all I'm going to be doing. No guitar today. My guitar's actually over there, behind the scenes. And I basically just want to read the book and record myself reading it aloud to you guys. And I thought that was a good idea. And I'm going to go ahead and just explain a little bit about the things that are on my mind, and just read because it'll help me out, keep me accountable, and also I've had this idea for the last couple of days, and I haven't been executing or acting on it, and this is it. Time to get to it, you know. So let's go ahead and introduce the book. The third edition, The Meaning of Life, a reader by E.D. Klemke, Stephen M. Kahn. I'm just gonna be reading it at my own pace and at my own, at my own free will. So if I say a certain word wrong, if I do anything silly or do whatever, or do I act out, or if I look confused, it's because it's all real. It's happening in real time, and I want to just, read for you guys. Let's do it. Okay. And I'm not gonna show you guys the book. I'll show you the pages. I'm just gonna read it aloud, and you guys are just gonna watch me read. Hopefully this wall doesn't break. Okay, it might break. All right. The Meaning of Life, a reader by E.D. Klemke, Stephen M. Kahn. I'm gonna read the back. Advance praise. This book includes a broad selection of one of the best philosophical writings on the question of the meaning of life. There is no other volume like this one. Timothy Shanahan, Loyola Marymount University said that. Klemke and Kahn have done a masterful job amassing historical and contemporary writings that students should grapple with. Klemke and Kahn have done a masterful job amassing historical and contemporary writings that students should grapple with as they question the meaning of life. Mary Domsky, University of New Mexico, said that. The third edition of this reader provides a strong foundation for helping students to think critically and systematically about the nature of reality and the meaning of life. Don Jabukowski, University of Central Arkansas, said that. Featuring 9 new articles chosen by co-editor Stephen M. Kahn, the third edition of E.D. Klemke's The Meaning of Life offers 22 insightful selections that explore this fascinating topic. The essays are primarily by philosophers, but also include materials from literary figures and religious thinkers. Interesting. As in previous editions, the readings are organized around 3 themes. Part 1, the articles defend the view that without faith in God, life has no meaning or purpose. In Part 2, the selections oppose this claim, defending instead of a non-theistic, humanistic alternative, that life can have meaning even in the absence of theistic commitment. In Part 3, the contributors ask whether the question of the meaning of life is itself meaningful. Interesting. One quick thing, my brother actually introduced this book to me, so I'm going to go ahead and give a quick little shout out to my brother. Thank you, Joe. Thank you. And let's get to it. The third edition adds substantial essays by Moritz Schlick, Joel Feinberg, and John Kitges, as well as selections from the writings of Louis P. Pojman, Emil L. Feckenheim, Robert Nozick, Susan Wolf, and Stephen M. Kahn. The only anthology of its kind, The Meaning of Life, a Reader, third edition, is ideal for courses in Introduction to Philosophy, Human Nature, and the Meaning of Life. It also offers general readers an accessible and stimulating introduction to the subject. About the editors. The late E.D. Klemke was professor of philosophy at Iowa State University, where he taught for more than 20 years. In addition to his own numerous writings, many of which explored the early development of analytical philosophy, he was a prolific editor. The Meaning of Life, which appeared in 1981 and in the second edition in 2000, is one of his best-known collections. Stephen M. Kahn is a professor of philosophy. Is professor of philosophy at the Graduate Center, City University of New York. He is author of Puzzles and Perplexities, Collected Essays, 2nd edition, 2007, and God, Reason, and Religion, 2006, co-editor of Happiness, OUP, 2007, and Ethics, 3rd edition, OUP, 2006, and editor of Classics of Western Philosophy, 7th edition, 2006, Exploring Philosophy, 2nd edition, OUP 2005, Political Philosophy, OUP 2005, 10 Essential Texts in the Philosophy of Religion, OUP 2005, and Philosophy for the 21st Century, OUP 2003. Oxford University Press. Let's do it. The Meaning of Life. 3rd edition, The Meaning of Life, a Reader. Edited by E.D. Klemke, Stephen M. Kahn. Hopefully I'm saying those names right. I apologize if I'm not, but all respect will be given, of course. Ignore this editing stuff. To Dirk J. Charlton, whose wise advice, encouragement, and friendship have enriched my life and made it more meaningful. EDK. Table of contents here. Some of my brother's writing too. Contents. We got Leo Tolstoy, David F. Swenson, Louis P. Podgman, Emil A. Fickenheim, Philip L. Quinn. We got a lot of things to read about. I'm excited. It's gonna be a good book. It's gonna be a good book. My brother told me it's gonna be really fire, so gotta put the time in. 22 chapters. Preface to the 3rd edition. E.D. Klemke, 1926-2000, taught at DePaul University. Oh, boys. Oh. Oh, boy, he did pass away, it seems like. Oh, man. Yeah, 1926. Yeah, E.D. Klemke, 1926 to 2000, taught at DePaul University, Roosevelt University, and for more than 2 decades at Iowa State University, winning teaching awards at each institution. In addition to his own numerous writings, many of which explored the early development of analytic philosophy, he was a prolific editor in The Meaning of Life. And The Meaning of Life, which first appeared in 1981 with the 2nd edition in 2000, is one of his best-known collections. At the suggestion of Robert Miller, my longtime editor at Oxford University Press, and with the approval of the executors of Professor Klemke's estate, I have undertaken a 3rd edition, retaining the book's structure while adding a significant number of essays, mostly of recent vintage, and shortening it or omitting others so as not to increase the volume's overall length. With this updating, I hope to highlight the continuing significance of Professor Klemke's work. The introduction remains as he wrote it, a comprehensive bibliography of contemporary books and articles on the meaning of life can be found in the survey article in the subject by Thaddeus Metz in Ethics 1124, 2002. I am grateful to Robert Miller for his support and guidance, to Associate Editor Sarah Calabi for her important role in realizing the project, and to the staff of Oxford University Press for its assistance throughout the stages of production. New York City, May 2007, SMC. Stephen M. Kahn. Preface to the 2nd edition. Viktor Frankl once wrote, "Man's concern about a meaning of life is a truest expression of the state of being human, because I agree with this view. I was led some years ago to put together a collection of essays on the topic of the meaning of life. Since that time, I have found many new essays on the topic as well as some that I had overlooked in working on the 1st edition. The selections contained in this revised edition are, I believe, the most important essays or chapters that have been written on the topic of the meaning of life. All but 2 of the selections are by 20th century writers, philosophers, theologians, let's go with that, and others. In some collections of essays, the editor provides a brief summary of all of the selections contained in the anthologies. I shall not attempt to do that here, for I believe that the reader's delight and stimulation will be enhanced if they turn to the selections and let the authors speak for themselves. I would like to express my gratitude to all of those who have helped with regard to the planning and preparation of this book. Among those to whom I am especially grateful are Gary Comstock, John Donaghy, John Nurness, Edna Weiser, William D. Hine, and Charles K. Benton. I would also like to express my appreciation to Robert B. Miller, Jeffrey Brodsky, and all of the staff at Oxford University Press. Finally, I would like to express my unfailing gratitude to some friends who have helped me find meaning and purpose in my own life. Among these, I must especially acknowledge Dirk Scholten, Bruce Hardy, Brian Graveline, Robert Gitchell, Brian Walker, Steve and Patty Stammy, David Hauser, William Hine, Robert and Karen Ridgway, and finally Tom Smolik, Zim Moran, Matt Schulte, and all of the great employees at Peoples. Ames, Iowa, February 1990, EDK. The meaning of life. Let's do this. It's pretty good so far. Pretty good information, pretty good feels. Great. Gratitude. I'll drink some water. And I do get winded. I gotta practice my breathing. That helps. Okay. Back to it. Introduction. The question of the meaning of life. E.D. Klemke. In his work, A Confession, Tolstoy gives an account of how, when he was 50 years old and at the height of his career, he became deeply distressed by the conviction that life was meaningless. Yikes. 5 years ago, something very strange began to happen to me. I was overcome by minutes, at first of perplexity, and then an arrest of life, as though I did not know how to live or what to do, and I lost myself and was dejected. But that passed, and I continued to live as before. And those moments of perplexity were repeated oftener, and always in one and the same form. These arrests of life found their expression in every same questions. Why? Well, and then? At first I thought those were simply aimless, inappropriate questions. It seemed to me that was all well known, and that if I ever wanted to busy myself with their solutions, it would not cost me much labor. That now I had no time to attend to them, but that if I wanted to, I should find the proper answers. But the questions began to repeat themselves, oftener and oftener. Answers were demanded more and more persistently, and like dots that fall in the same spot, these questions without any answers thickened into one black blotch. I felt that what I was standing on had given way, that I had no foundation to stand on, that which I lived by no longer existed, and that I had nothing to live by. Well, I know, I said to myself, all which science wants to persistently to know, but there is no answer to the question about the meaning of life. Tolstoy? Perhaps almost every sensitive and reflective person has had at least one of those same moments, has had at least some moments when similar fears and questions have arisen in his or her life. Perhaps the experiences were not as extreme as Tolstoy's, but they have nevertheless been troublesome. And surely almost everyone has at some point asked, what is the meaning of life? Is there any meaning at all? What is it all about? What is the point of it all? It seems evident. Then, that the question of the meaning of life is one of the most important questions. Also, it is important for all persons, not merely the philosophers. At least one writer has maintained that it is the most urgent question in the myth of Sisyphus. Camus writes, there is but one truly serious philosophical problem, and that is suicide. Judging whether life is or is not worth living amounts to answering the foundational question of philosophy. All the rest, whether the world has 3 dimensions, whether the mind has 9 or 12 categories, comes afterwards. These are games one must first answer. If I ask myself how to judge that this question is more urgent than that, if I ask myself how to judge that this question is more urgent than that, I reply that one judges by the actions it entails. I have never seen anyone die for the ontological argument, for the existence of a God. Galileo, who held a scientific truth of great importance, adjured it with the greatest of ease as soon as it endangered his life. In a certain sense, he did right. That truth was not worth the stake, whether the earth or the sun revolves around the... Ate pineapples a minute ago. Whether the earth or the sun revolves around the other is a matter of profound indifference. To tell the truth, it is a futile question. On the other hand, I see many people die because they judge that life is not worth living. I see others, paradoxically, getting killed by the ideas or illusions that give them a reason for living. What is called a reason for living is also an excellent reason for dying. I therefore conclude that the meaning of life is the most urgent questions. However, we may rank the question as the most urgent of all, or as one of the most urgent of all. Most of us do find the question to be one that merits our serious attention. Part of its urgency stems from the fact that it is related to many other questions that face us in our daily lives. Many of the decisions we make with regard to careers, leisure time, moral dilemmas, and other matters depend on how we answer the question of the meaning of life. However, the question may mean several things. Let us attempt to distinguish some of them. The question, what is the meaning of life, may mean any of the following. Why does the universe exist? Why is there something rather than nothing? Is there some plan for the whole universe? Why do humans in general exist? Do they exist for some purpose? If so, what is it? Why do I exist? Why do I exist for some purpose? If so, how am I to find what it is? If not, how can life have any significance or value? I do not mean to suggest that there are rigidly distinct questions. They are obviously interrelated. Hence, we may interpret the question, what is the meaning of life? Broadly, so that it can include any two or all three of these questions. In so doing, we will be following common usage. Perhaps most of those who are deeply concerned with the question interpret it mainly in terms of question 3. However, there are others who include either questions 1 or 2 or both along with question. Again, we need not be concerned with specifying one of the interpretations as the correct one. Rather, let us recognize that all of them are often involved when one asks about the meaning of life. In turning to possible answers to the question of the meaning of life, we find different approaches or stances. The theistic answer, the non-theistic alternative, the approach that questions the meaningfulness of the question. Well, these 3 different approaches are represented by the readings found in parts 1, 2, and 3, respectively, of this volume. Perhaps a brief summary of each would be desirable at this point. I think so. Part 1. According to the theistic answer, the meaning of life is found in the existence of God, a supremely benevolent and all-powerful being, transcendent to the natural universe, but who created the universe and fashioned man in his image and endowed him with a preordained purpose. In this view, without the existence of God, or at least without faith in God, life has no meaning or purpose, and hence is not worth living. It is difficult to find many works in which this position is explicitly defended from a philosophical view. However, it is an answer that is held widely by religious believers, and it is apparent that in many cases it is a basis or part of the basis for religious belief. Apart from Tolstoy's Confession, the other essays found in part 1 of this volume do provide a direct theological existential defense of this view. Part 2. The non-theistic or humanistic alternative, of course, denies the claim that the meaning of life is dependent on the existence of a God. According to this alternative, since there is no good reason to believe in the existence of a transcendent God, there is no good reason to believe that life has any objective meaning or purpose. That is, any meaning that is dependent on anything outside of the natural universe, rather than the meaning of life. Rather, the meaning of life is there, if there is one, must be found within the natural universe. Some adherents of this view go on to claim that there is no good reason to think life has any meaning in any objective sense, but there is a good reason to believe that it can nevertheless have meaning in a subjective tense. In other words, it is up to each individual to fashion or create his or her own meaning by virtue of his own consciousness and creative activity. Let me read that one more time. That summed up the last few sentences. In other words, it is up to each individual to fashion or create his or her own meaning by virtue of his own consciousness and creative activity. Creative activity. I like that. Defense of this position is found. A defense of this position is found in the editor's own essay, in other essays in Part 2 of this volume. Part 3. There is yet a third approach to the question of the meaning of life. According to this approach, the question, what is the meaning of life, is a peculiar or at least an ambiguous one. What kind of question are we asking when we ask about the meaning of life? There are some who think that on analysis of terms such as meaning, purpose, and value, the question of the meaning of life turns out to be cognitively meaningless. However, there are others who reject that claim and take the opposing view. According to them, the various questions that make up the larger question of the meaning of life can be given an interpretation that renders them to be intelligible and cognitively significant. Various aspects of and perspectives on this position are represented in the essays in Part 3 of this volume. Yeah, that was going to be a tough one to cover, but I'm sure it'll be very insightful. It is my view that the question of the meaning of life is significant and an important one, and that it can be given an answer. I believe that the answer does not rest on any theistic or metaphysical assumptions. Since my defense of this position has been given in my essay, Living Without Appeal, an affirmative philosophy of life, contained in this volume, I will not repeat what I have said there, except to say this. It will be recalled that in the passage quoted above, Camus maintains that judging whether life is or is not worth living amounts to answering the fundamental question of philosophy. The answer I have given to that question is that there is no formula or recipe or slogan to guarantee that life will be worth living, but I believe that it can be worth living, and I agree with that too. I believe that I shall die, but that in the meantime I can find a genuine meaning and purpose in life that makes it worth living. There are some who will object, but how can life have any meaning or worth or value if it must come to an end? Sir Karl Popper has given the best answer I know of to that question. He writes, there are those who think that life is valueless because it comes to an end. They fail to see that the opposite argument might also be proposed, that if there were no end to life, life would have no value, that it is, in part, the ever-present danger of losing it which helps to bring home to us the value of life. Pardon me. Oh my god. That's pretty good. Notes. Tolstoy, Camus, Karl Popper. Mr. Popper. Popping off. Part 1. The Theistic Answer. I'm on page 5, guys. 7 now. Chapter 1. Leo Tolstoy. My Confession. Although I regarded authorship as a waste of time, I continued to write during those 15 years. I have tasted of the seduction of authorship, of the seduction of enormous monetary remunerations. Wow, that's a tough word to say. Oh man, I'm using my phone to record. I was gonna ask Siri, but remunerations and applauses. I'm assuming has to do with mola. Let me read that one more time. I have tasted of the seduction of authorship, of the seduction of enormous monetary remunerations and applauses for my insignificant labor, and so I submitted to it as being a means for improving my material condition and for stifling in my soul all questions about the meaning of life and life in general. In my writings, I advocated what to me was the only truth, that it was necessary to live in such a way as to derive the greatest comfort for oneself and one's family. Thus, I proceeded to live. But 5 years ago, something very strange began to happen with me. I was overcome by minutes at first of perplexity, and then of an arrest of life, as though I did not know how to live or what to do, and I lost myself and was dejected. But that passed, and I continued to live as before. Then those minutes of perplexity were repeated oftener and oftener, and always in one of the same form. These arrests of life found their expression in every same questions. Why? Well, and then? At first I thought that those were simply aimless, inappropriate questions. It seemed to me that that was all well known, and that if I ever wanted to busy myself with their solution, it would not cost me much labor. That now I had no time to attend to them, but that if I wanted to, I should find the proper answers. But the questions began to repeat themselves oftener and oftener. Answers were demanded more and more persistently, and like dots that fall in the same spot, these questions, without any answers, thickened into one black blotch. There happened what happens with any person who falls ill with a mortal internal disease. At first, there appeared insignificant symptoms of indisposition, to which the patient pays no attention. Then these symptoms are repeated more and more frequently and blend into one temporarily temporally indivisible suffering. Wow, is that true? Oh boy, it's chilling here, guys. Repeated more and more frequently and blend into one temporally indivisible suffering. The suffering keeps going, and before the patient has had time to look around, he becomes conscious that what he took for an indisposition is the most significant thing in the world to him: his death. The same happened with me. I understood that it was not a passing indisposition, but something very important, and that if the questions were going to repeat themselves, it would be necessary to find an answer to them, and I tried to answer them. The questions seemed to me so foolish, simple, and childish. But the moment I touched them and tried to solve them, I became convinced. In the first place, that they were not childish and foolish, but very important and profound questions in life. And in the second, that no matter how much I might try, I should not be able to answer them. Before attending to my Samara estate, to my son's education, or to the writing of a book, I ought to know why I should do that. So long as I did not know why, I could not do anything. I could not live amidst my thoughts of farming, which interested me very much during that time. There was suddenly passed through my head a question like this: all right, you're going to have 6,000 desiantinas of land in the government of Samara, and 300 horses, and then? I completely lost my senses and did not know what to think farther. Well, when I thought of the education of my children, I said to myself, why? Reflecting on the manner in which the masses might obtain their welfare, I suddenly said to myself, what is that to me? Or thinking of the fame which my works would get me, I said to myself, all right, you'll be more famous than Gogol, Pushkin, Shakespeare, Moliere, and all the writers in the world. What of it? And I was absolutely unable to make any reply. The questions were not waiting, and I had to answer them at once. If I did not answer them, I could not live. I felt that what I was standing on had given way, that I had no foundation to stand on, that which I lived by no longer existed, and that I had nothing to live by. All that happened to me when I was on every side surrounded by what is considered to be complete happiness. I had a good, loving, and beloved wife, good children, and a large estate, which grew and increased without any labor on my part. I was respected by my neighbors and friends more than ever before, was praised by strangers, and without any self-deception would consider my name famous. With all that, I was not deranged or mentally unsound. On the contrary, I was in full command of my mental and physical powers. such as I had rarely met within people of my age. Physically, I could work in a field, mowing, without falling behind a peasant. Mentally, I could work from 8 to 10 hours in succession without experiencing any consequences from the strain. And while in such condition I arrived at the conclusion that I could not live, and fearing death, I had to use cunning against myself, in order that I might not take my life. This mental condition expressed itself to me in this form. My life is a stupid, mean trick played on me by somebody, although I did not recognize that somebody as having created me. The form of the conception that someone had played a mean, stupid trick on me by bringing me into the world was the most natural one that presented itself to me. Involuntarily, I imagined that somewhere, there was somebody who was now having fun as he looked down upon me and saw me, who had lived for 30 or 40 years, learning, developing, growing in body and mind. Now that I had become strengthened in mind and had reached the summit of life from which it lay all before me, standing as a complete fool on that summit and seeing clearly that there was nothing in life and never would be. And that was fun to me. But whether there was or was not that somebody who made fun of me did not make it easier for me. I could not ascribe any sensible meaning to a single act, or to my whole life. I was only surprised that I had not understood that from the start. All that had long ago been known to everybody. Sooner or later there would come diseases and death. They had come already, to my dear ones and to me. There would be nothing left but stench and worms. All my affairs, no matter what they might be, would sooner or later be forgotten, and I myself should not exist. So why should I worry about all these things? How could a man fail to see that and live? That was surprising. A person could live only so long as he was drunk. But the moment he sobered up, he could not help seeing that all that was only a deception. And a stupid deception at that. Really, there was nothing funny and ingenious about it, but only something cruel and stupid. Long ago has been told the Eastern story about the traveler who in the steep is overtaken by an infuriated beast. Trying to save himself from the animal, the traveler jumps into a waterless well, but at its bottom he sees a dragon who opens his jaws in order to swallow him. And the unfortunate man does not dare climb out, lest he perish from the infuriated beast, and does not dare jump down to the bottom of the well, lest he be devoured by the dragon, and so clutches a twig of a wild bush growing in the cleft on the well, and holds on to it. His hands grow weak, and he feels that soon he shall have to surrender to the peril which awaits him either side. But he still holds on and sees two mice, one white and the other black, in even measure making a circle around the main trunk of the bush to which he is clinging, and nibbling at it on all sides. Now at any moment the bush will break and tear off, and he will fall into the dragon's jaw. The traveler sees that and knows that he will inevitably perish. But while he is still clinging, he sees some drops of honey hanging on the leaves of the bush, and so reaches out for them with his tongue and licks the leaves. Just so I hold on to the branch of life, knowing that the dragon of death is waiting inevitably for me, ready to tear me to pieces, and I cannot understand why I have fallen on such suffering. And I try to lick that honey which used to give me pleasure, but now it no longer gives me joy, and the white and the black mouse day and night nibble at the branch to which I am holding on. I clearly see the dragon, and the honey is no longer sweet to me. I see only the inevitable dragon and the mice, and am unable to turn my glance away from them. That is not a fable, but a veritable, indisputable, comprehensible truth. Wow, that's a cool story. Long ago has been told the Eastern story about the traveler. It's chilly in here, guys. 10 pages. I'm gonna go ahead and just, I'm gonna stop on that story. That was pretty fire. That was pretty good. I still have that much more to go. We have that much more to go if you guys still want to partake in this. But I'm gonna keep making these videos and just hopefully, get this book done by the end of the month, February 2020. And thank you guys for listening. Basically, that was pretty good. I'm glad I finally got started, and I'm happy that I'm reading. I need to read more. I need to read more, and I want to read more, ultimately. But yes, guys, I'm gonna go ahead and end the video. I have to go to the restroom, and also it's late. I gotta sleep. Apparently, we gotta get a lot of sleep, guys. Okay. So I'm gonna go ahead and leave, and catch you guys in the next video. And thank you for watching. Subscribe if you guys want to, follow along with this journey, and of reading my books. I want to go ahead and just educate myself, and while also sharing this knowledge and sharing my growth as well on YouTube and with you guys. And so, let me know if you guys like that, and if you guys are okay with the pace. That I'm just reading at my own, my own leisure. And so, I hope, I get better at reading as I read more books and read this book. But yeah, guys, I'll catch you guys in the next video. Thank you. Good night, or good day, or take care.